Let's learn how to snatch. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Coach Brian from Big Ben Strength, and in this video, we're going to learn how to snatch. This is a great video for beginners as it's going to include a complete tutorial plus my beginner progression. The snatch is typically thought of as the most complex of the lifts, but today we're going to learn it in under 20 minutes. First, there are two main stances for the snatch. We've got our pulling stance and our squatting stance. Typically, the pulling stance is going to be a narrower stance and our squatting stance wider, though this could vary from person to person based on proportions. For your pulling stance, we should choose something that is typically just underneath the hips that you would feel comfortable doing a vertical jump at. For our squatting stance, typically a little bit wider with the feet outside of our hips, and something that you can get the deepest possible range of motion squat while still maintaining an upright torso. Next, we'll need to find our grip on the barbell. We typically need to find a grip on the barbell that puts the bar right in our hip crease. Not too wide, which is going to put it above, or too narrow, which is going to put it below. The next test is to make sure that this is a comfortable grip for an overhead squat. If we are in the hip crease, but at the bottom of an overhead squat, that bar is falling forward because we lack the mobility, then we may need to go a little bit wider. If we're at the bottom of the overhead squat and our grip is unstable, then we may need to go a little bit narrower. Next, we'll need to establish our hook grip. For the hook grip, we're going to place the thumb underneath the bar and then lock it with our fingers on top of our thumb. We don't want to pull the thumb back and have it behind the bar and try and find a hook grip there because it's not going to be secured. The hook grip is one of the few non-negotiable techniques for the snatch. So if it doesn't feel comfortable in the beginning, you just need to get some practice in. And after about 2 weeks, it'll start to feel comfortable and you won't notice any pain. The reasons that we use the hook grip is one, it removes any arm tension, making it a more fluid lift as we transition into the bottom of the squat. And two, it eliminates grip strength as a potential limiting factor for the snatch. The first lift in our snatch progression is an overhead squat. We're going to get the bar up in our snatch grip position overhead and practice the deepest possible squat that we can without letting our chest fall forward excessively or that bar go back too far or start drifting forward. In the bottom of this position, we should have our chest as vertical as we can, our elbows pushing against that bar as hard as possible, and our balance mid-foot and not too far back on the heel or too far forward on the toes. If you struggle with the mobility portion of the overhead squat, start with an empty barbell or a PVC pipe and start working on getting into the deepest possible squat that you can before progressing further into the snatch at a deep range of motion squat. The next progression in our snatch progression is the power position snatch. In the power position, we are going to bend the knees slightly and lean forward slightly so that our shoulders are in line with or slightly in front of the bar. This is going to help us mimic a vertical jump position, and it should be the most powerful position that we have here. Along with the knee bend and slight forward lean, we want to pay attention to our elbow position. We should not be pointing our elbows back like this, but instead out to the sides to allow for that bar to stay as close as possible during the lift. From the bottom of our power position, we will stand up with the legs, start extending and making sure that we are moving vertical before we complete the rest of the lift. As we're doing this, the most important portion of this is to make sure that our legs are driving up and not hips pushing the bar forward and away from us. That'll make it easier for our arms to keep it close to the body as we move down into the overhead squat. Once we have perfected the power position snatch, we're going to move on to our next progression, a double pause snatch. But first, we need to learn how to set up when pulling the bar from the ground. When pulling the bar from the ground, we should have the hips above the knees and the shoulders above the hips with mid-foot balance. The start position is going to vary from person to person pretty greatly based on your proportions. If you have longer legs, you may find that your hips are a little bit higher. If you have shorter legs, you may find that your hips are a little bit lower in the start position. But wherever you choose, try and find a mid-foot balance, and you should have a pretty good start position. For the double pause snatch, we are going to pull from our start position to right above the kneecap, stop, then move into our power position that we've practiced, stop again, and complete the rest of the lift. In the knee position, we should make sure that we're getting our knees back far enough to clear the road for the bar, but not too far back where we shift our balance back onto the heel. Along with that, if we get our knees too far forward, we don't get them out of the way enough, that bar is going to have to go around them. It's going to be a less efficient lift. Knees back just enough and midfoot balance. Then we move into that power position we've already practiced. Knees bent, shoulders in front of the bar, elbows rotated out, and complete the rest of the lift. The next progression in the snatch progression for beginners is a tempo snatch. We're going to mimic the same exact movement that we did for the double pause, but without pausing in any of those positions. We're going to pull with a 4-second count till we get to that power position before we finish the rest of the lift. This gives us enough time to make sure that we're practicing each of the positions that we want to practice as we go through the lift without adding any extra speed to the mix, which could cause our technique to falter. Adding on to that, the tempo snatch is my favorite variation of the snatch to improve your technique if you already have learned the snatch from the ground. So if you're struggling with your technique and each of those earlier progressions isn't really something that's going to help you out that much, stick with that tempo snatch in your training and you will see your technique improve. The last progression in our snatch progression for beginners is a full speed snatch. This should not look that much different than a tempo snatch. We're adding a little bit of speed to the lift and gradually getting faster as we move from the ground to our power position before the fastest portion of the lift, us getting under the bar. The key to the full speed snatch is we want to make sure that we're not starting too quickly. If we start out as fast as possible, the only thing that will happen is the lift getting slower as we get closer to that power position rather than faster like we want. Now, there are typically two ways that people will start a snatch. Static, where they're starting from an unmoving position, and dynamic, where they'll move their hips into their starting position to get a little bit more power. If you're a beginner, I recommend starting with that static start position, as starting with a dynamic start position is usually going to lead to an inconsistent start position. Get that start position dialed in, and then as you get a little bit more advanced, you can switch to a dynamic start position, which will add more power to your pull. Hopefully you guys learned something in this video. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.